In this section, we shift from one-time onboarding to continuous oversight. You'll see how ongoing due diligence, adverse media checks, and periodic reviews work together to detect change, update risk ratings, and keep your AML program truly always on. KYC is often treated like a one-time event at onboarding, but that creates a dangerous illusion. Your initial CDD or EDD only gives you a snapshot of who the customer appears to be on day one. In reality, businesses evolve, ownership structures shift, and behavior and reputation can change quickly. That's why ongoing due diligence is essential. It refreshes information and monitors activity, so the customer's risk profile stays accurate and emerging threats are caught early. You can think of ongoing due diligence as three streams feeding one unified risk profile. Transactional intelligence comes from account monitoring. Are balances, cash flows, and counterparties behaving as expected? Structural intelligence comes from KYC reviews. Does the customer's profile, ownership, and stated source of wealth still make sense? External intelligence comes from adverse media. Do news, sanctions, or network links change how risky this customer is? Strong AML programs connect all three continuously, instead of treating them as separate checks. This matrix shows how a risk-based approach turns into concrete workload. Low-risk customers receive lighter, mostly automated monitoring, simpler media checks, and longer review cycles. Medium-risk customers are subject to stepped-up analytics, broader media screening, and more frequent reviews. High-risk customers face near real-time monitoring, continuous adverse media checks, and at least annual, in-depth reviews. The core takeaway: risk rating directly drives the intensity of monitoring, documentation effort, and escalation expectations. Ongoing monitoring is about comparing what a customer is doing to what we'd reasonably expect. That baseline comes from KYC, their occupation, source of funds, typical geographies, and usual product use. Systems then watch for deviations in volume, frequency, counterparties, or jurisdictions. When activity moves outside that expected band, rules and scenarios trigger alerts. Those alerts are not confirmations of laundering. They're prompts for an analyst to investigate, add context, and decide on next steps. Triggers act as early warning signals that something about a customer's risk profile has shifted. Structurally, internal changes include new owners, directors, or UBOs. Externally, it might be sanctions, listings, regulatory actions, or major legal cases. Behaviorally, internal triggers include sudden spikes in volume, repeated alerts, or interest in higher-risk products. External behavioral triggers are things like adverse media or links to high-risk countries through counterparties. Each trigger should prompt review, not automatic exit. Adverse media is simply credible negative news about a person or entity that hints at fraud, corruption, money laundering, or terrorism, even without a conviction. Its power is timing. It often surfaces well before a name appears on a sanctions list or in a court judgment, so it acts as an early warning radar for both financial crime and reputational damage. In practice, adverse media helps you refine risk ratings and decide whether enhanced due diligence or even exit is needed. Adverse media screening works like a small intelligence factory. First, you select the right sources: reputable news, aggregators, and sometimes court records. Then you broaden coverage using both local and international outlets and different languages where relevant. Next, you apply discipline techniques: consistent name strings, risk-based keywords, and crime categories within defined timeframes. When all of that feeds a screening engine, the output isn't random hits. It's focused, actionable intelligence you can actually use in investigations. Now shift to how those hits become decisions. Adverse media and screening alerts start as a giant noise problem. First, you collect massive volumes of raw hits from news and databases. Then you apply identity and context filters. Does the name, date of birth, role, and geography actually match your customer? And is the source credible? Next, you decide whether each hit is a true match or a false positive. Finally, you rate the impact, document your reasoning, and escalate real risk. Periodic KYC reviews are where the risk-based approach becomes very practical. The higher the risk, the shorter the review cycle, and the more intensive the checks. High-risk customers are revisited at least annually, or sooner if activity changes. Medium-risk customers are typically reviewed every few years, aligned with regulation and policy. Low-risk customers can have longer cycles and a lighter refresh. What matters is clear documentation of the risk rating and why the chosen frequency is appropriate. A proper KYC refresh is a fresh risk assessment, not a box-ticking exercise. You start by confirming who the customer is today, current IDs, addresses, and registration details. Then you validate who really owns or controls the entity and whether that structure has changed. Next, you reassess source of funds and source of wealth against the products they use. Finally, you test whether their transaction and alert history still matches their stated profile. Event-driven reviews make sure you don't wait for the calendar when risk changes suddenly. Even if a customer is not yet due for their periodic review, a material event means you reassess now. Events can come from the customer, like asking for a higher risk product or entering a new country. They can also come from your own monitoring data or from the outside world through adverse media, sanctions changes, or legal actions. Non-cooperative customers are a major friction point in ongoing due diligence, so you need a predictable, documented escalation path. Start with clear communication. What is required, by when, and what happens if they don't respond. Then use tracked reminders to demonstrate reasonable effort. If that fails, introduce proportionate account restrictions. Only after those steps, and with strong documentation, should you exit the relationship in line with policy and legal obligations. Overall, ongoing due diligence should function as an ecosystem, not a set of disconnected checks. Monitoring alerts, adverse media, and review outcomes should all feed one unified customer profile. That hub becomes your single source of truth for risk decisions. With that in place, you can prioritize resources, sending your best investigators to the highest risk cases. And because all learning flows back into the hub, you can continuously refine scenarios, thresholds, and procedures as risks and regulatory expectations evolve. To wrap up, carry this forward. CDD never stops at onboarding. Risk changes with the customer's life. Match your effort to the risk level, not to a checkbox. Combine internal activity, external intelligence, and context. Then document every decision clearly so your work is explainable, defensible, and regulator-ready.